Good evening and welcome to the City of Stratford's public information session on the accessibility plan for transit and parallel transit. My name is Tatiana and I am the city clerk. This is our first electronic public information session. We thank everyone for joining us. The session will begin with a PowerPoint presentation provided by the city's manager of transit. We will then ask registered delegations for their questions and comments. Following the registered delegation presentations, we will begin reading any comments submitted through the Q&A into the meeting. If you have a question or a comment, please feel free to submit it through the Q&A. Please note you must be logged into the meeting via Zoom in order to submit a question or a comment. I will now turn it over to Michael Mosley, Manager of Transit.
Thank you, Tatiana. Good evening, everybody. Just another one of the new ways of doing things, and kind of my first kick at the cat as far as hosting this. So as most of you know, this is our annual report card as far as how transit operates and its compliance with AODA. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just to give an idea of the agenda and how it's going to flow, basically we go through the purpose of the meeting. Then I have a short presentation on transit accessibility. I'm going to talk about some new things too, as far as new bus shelters and the new real-time arrival audio-visual information, which has a AODA compliant to it, which just launched about 7 weeks ago. And then as Tatiana mentioned, there'll be some Q&A afterwards, and I'll explain the completion of comment forms because we don't have paper copies, but I will give everyone that information towards the end as far as if you think of anything after the fact and you want to get a hold of me, you have a question, I will give you that information so that you can get a hold of me. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this meeting, the City of Stratford is committed to meeting all the requirements of the AODA, including those set out in the transportation standard. The point of this transportation standard is to ensure that the city makes its services and vehicles accessible excuse me, to persons with disabilities. So by having accessible transportation service, it means that people with disabilities will be able to live, work, and participate fully in our community. As a spin-off, accessible transportation services also benefits visitors to the city and families and strollers and seniors. Just to go a little bit further, the requirements under the AODA are conventional transportation service providers should hold at least one annual public meeting, which is what we're doing now. I usually do it in the fall around this time, usually every year. Conventional transportation and specialized transit service must be addressed in the city's accessibility plan. And the accessibility plan identifies barriers for persons with disabilities and makes plans to remove and prevent them from occurring in the future. Persons with disabilities have an opportunity to review this and provide feedback on the accessibility plan, in particular, the transit service. Next slide, please. So there's a number of requirements for conventional and specialized transportation with regards to the accessibility plans, and they are found in the city's accessibility plan, and you can see the full plan, which includes the transit, which you can go to the city website and you can view it there, and it's under the accessibility tab on the city's website. And as I do every year, the city, as far as transit goes, is we're meeting all these requirements. Next slide, please. So some of these things have not changed. You might notice the odd slide that repeats itself, but just to show that we're being compliant with the legislative requirements. We again are meeting all these requirements, and it's this particular slide deals with the accessibility equipment on the bus or on the mobility bus. They're kneeling buses, the 40-foot conventionals, they kneel and the ramp can be deployed. For the mobility side, which you see on the picture to the right, is is a lift that's loaded from the back rear section. Next slide, please. The other requirements are we need to have an emergency preparedness and response policy, excuse me, which we do. And just to give you kind of an example of what that might be, there are a few times a year that I might get a call at some point of the day or late at night from first responders, whether it's fire or police, that they need to evacuate a building for whatever reason. Usually if temporary housing is required, they will call me and I will dispatch the fleet, whether it's to keep people warm, out of the weather, keep them cool depending on the time of year. Those are the things that we will do and are prepared to do in a moment's notice. On the mobility side, there's also the odd time, one that might be after service hours, might have an issue with their power chair or scooter, to where we have a process set up that if fire or police are dispatched to that, they call me and I arrange for them to get transportation to a safe place wherever that might be. So again, we demonstrate that that we meet all the requirements for this slide too. Next slide, please. So when it comes to fares, it's they need to be the same for both services. So whether you use mobility or whether you use conventional, the fares need to be the same. The city, however, we can charge a lesser fare for if someone wants to use mobility bus, but we keep it the requirements the same across the board. As far as transit stops, the city ensures that persons with disabilities are able to get on or off the bus at the closest available safe location. And this is kind of determined by the bus driver. If it's not an official stop, sometimes there are challenges in the winter as far as a cleared bus stop that needs to be done immediately. So we'll find a safe spot to let them off, and you know, we'll make sure they're in a safe location. And of course, the driver will give, you know, consideration to the preferences of the person with that disability. When it comes to service disruptions, if a route or scheduled service is temporarily changed, and if we know it in advance, which sometimes is the case, sometimes not, we will make every effort to make alternate accessible arrangements to transfer a person with a disability either to the route destination or to where they need to go at the end of their trip. Next slide, please. So on this slide, for those that use transit, you probably notice he's just inside behind the driver's area on both sides, and it's the priority and courtesy seating. Basically, priority seating, it's clearly marked with the blue sticker, and it's fairly common. It looks the same throughout all transit agencies. It's clearly marked with the priority seating for persons with disabilities, and it's located as close as possible to the entrance of the buses. There are signs to indicate that passengers other than passengers without disabilities must give up their priority seating if it's needed by a person with a disability. Now, courtesy seating, which is in the same area, is just kind of another level down. It could be maybe an expectant mother or maybe someone, a parent who has a kid or two or an infant. That's kind of the idea behind the courtesy seating. Next slide. Just some technical requirements for the conventional and for the mobility. You'll find that grab bars, you know, hand holds or handrails or stanchions, as we call them, they're usually yellow, so they stand out. The floors are non-slip surfaces, and we have spots for mobility spaces. And there's stop requests and emergency responses controls on these stanchions and handrails to make it easy for those to do a stop request. Next slide, please. So some more technical requirements. I mentioned about the emergency response controls, the stop requests, they're on the stanchions. And for those that are actually watching the live stream, that first picture on the left is what the destination light bar used to look like. You will see in a few more slides what the new updated version of this looks like, and I must say it's pretty impressive. Next slide, please. So as far as the specialized service or the mobility bus, as we call it, or parallel transit, there are some specific requirements for specialized transit, the mobility bus, under the standards for the AODA. So this includes 3 categories of eligibility to qualify for specialized transportation service. So there's unconditional, there's temporary, and conditional. Conditional is a person with a disability that prevents them from using conventional transportation service, so on a regular bus. Temporary is a person with a temporary disability that prevents them from using conventional transportation services on a temporary basis. And conditional is a person with a disability where environmental or physical barriers limit their ability to consistently use conventional transportation. So common to specialized, there's an application process. Ours here in the city is a pre-registered service. And there's a part of the form that needs to be filled out by a medical practitioner. Like I mentioned before, the fees to ride the mobility have to match the fees for Stratford Transit or for the conventional side. And we also need to make a mobility bus available for visitors who meet the certain specific criteria. And the other thing that we kind of work hand in hand with is providing coordinated service with other specialized service providers inside and just in the outside of the city of Stratford. So basically what that means is there's something that we can't accommodate for whatever particular reason, we will give them contact information for another provider that's in the city or just outside of the city. And in the same, they will do the same for us. So we go back and forth to make sure everyone's needs are met. Next slide, please. So to continue with some more requirements. So the city is responsible for ensuring that conventional and specialized transit provide the same hours and the same days of service. So when the big buses start at 6 in the morning, so does mobility bus needs to be available. Same with throughout the day and towards the end of the day. So when the regular service is done on conventional 10 o'clock, we have to offer mobility service up to 10 o'clock as well. So that's all through the whole service week, Monday to or Sunday to Saturday. Also, there's a need to provide same-day service to the extent that it's available. For those that use the mobility bus, it is a pre-booked service, and we book up to 2 weeks in advance. And we do try, when people call if they need something the same day, we do try to make it work as best we can. But some days it doesn't always necessarily work out. If we have the space and we have the time, we will definitely look after someone if they need a same-day trip. But usually for the people that use the mobility bus all the time, they know that we do 2 weeks up into advance. Another thing with the mobility bus is in ensuring there are no restrictions to the number of trips a person can take a day. With the same thing with service delays, we pretty much with our booking system it's pretty much all manual, so it's all phone calls. So if there's something going on the road, it's easy enough to phone our customers to say there's going to be a delay, and it's usually for weather related reasons. And of course, allowing companions to travel with persons with disabilities if the space is available, and we don't deny it if someone needs a support worker or a support person or a companion or a family member that needs to go with them to help them out, and those are free of charge. Next slide, please. As I talked about a couple years ago, we had a new style bus shelter that were installed around the city. We are getting another 14, which are going to be installed this week. And they're all solar powered. They're very efficient to run. There's no cost to power them. And they are again, the 5x10 size shelters, just to make sure that everyone, especially with those with a disability, or if they're in a scooter or a chair, there's lots of room to move around. The older styles are more of the 4x8 ones, which I just found weren't the size wasn't suffice enough to do 4x8s going forward. So everything going forward now is a 5x10 design. Next slide, please. Just they're being installed actually this week as we speak. And I'll just name some of the locations that are getting them this year. It's the McDonald's on Ontario Street, River Dental right around the corner on C.H. Meyer. We have a shelter going in at Willow Street and Bab. We will have a shelter at Dynamag, which is on Wright Boulevard. We're also doing an install at the Army Navy, which is on Lorne. And we're doing one at the No Frills on Olone, right in front of that medical center. Next slide, please. We're also doing another one at Willow at the walkway there that takes you to C.H. Meyer. We're also doing a shelter at Maple and Home. And this will be a new bus stop once the shelter is built. And this is the dance studio on Erie Street there. There's also the axe throwing facility as well. So that'll be a new bus stop once that shelter is installed. We're also getting one at Graff and Kemp, and we're getting one Foreman at Oakdale, which is right across from Stratford District Secondary School. Another popular stop on Dunn Road is FIO, another manufacturing, and we're getting one at St. Vincent at Yonge Street, which is where the Conestoga Career Center is. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, the new technology that was a project for about 1.5 years that we rolled out about 7 weeks ago, has many AODA components and enhancements. This is what the sign, as far as the clarity, if you recall going back to the little light bar I showed you with the little text that was at the front of the bus, these now are 24-inch monitors. They're very vibrant, they're very bright, and you can actually see them from the back of the bus. And it actually lists the next 5 stops on the route. And you can kind of see over to the right-hand side of that slide, it shows you in time when we're going to reach that stop. There's also, each one of those stops announces the same way as they do on the screen. And they also announce on the outside of the bus, there are outside speakers. So if someone maybe has a vision impairment at the terminal, all the buses announce what route they are when they're at the terminal and stopped. Next slide, please. So I stole this one from the Beacon, and it kind of shows you for those that haven't been riding transit in the last several weeks, this is what the signs look like at the front. The other great component with this system is in real time, I can put announcements on the screen per route. You can kind of see that's how it, the pitch is a little small here, but I just made up an announcement that's announced through the speakers, word for word is the text you see on the screen. So if there's construction, if there's a delay, we can put that out in real time within seconds to alert passengers. And this also goes to the web app for those that are tracking their buses on their mobile devices or their PC or their tablet or their laptop. The same messages come through as well. And it's to the driver, it's to the screen, and it's to the web app. So everybody knows that when you're tracking your bus, these service disruptions or concerns are already out there for everyone to know in plenty of time. Next slide, please. So I just did kind of a snapshot for those that haven't seen the web app. This is kind of what it looks like. On the first screen, I've just used the terminal as the arrival point. Excuse me for one second. So with using the terminal, you can search for any stop by name, or if you know the stop number, because each bus stop has a stop. The terminal is 1001. Or you can define it even more, and the next drop down below that, you can look for the route and again the stop as well. So based on this time, which was 2:08, I think I did this yesterday, all the buses are due into the terminal in 22 minutes. So to define it even more, the picture to the right of that, excuse me, is if you click on the particular route on the first picture, it'll give you a drop-down map of where the bus is based on where you're located. So if you can see in the picture, you can see the it's a black bus with a circle around it. It's just heading to Jinan because this is the Huron. And the red dot to the furthest right is where the transit terminal is. So you can track it in real time and follow the bus. And it also gives you the times above, which in this case, it says 19 minutes to the terminal. And this has been really well received, and people are really enjoying the technology. And you've got everything at your fingertips as far as when you want to know where your bus is and when it's going to arrive and at what stop. Next slide, please. So future AODA requirements and in projects. So happy to say again, we're meeting every existing legislation as far as how transit operates. There are no new requirements for transit, and that's been the case for quite some time. For most transit agencies, it's a matter of making an investment to get more or better caught up as far as, especially sometimes with how bus stops are and where they're located. Again, future requirements are annual transit meetings, which I do annually every time in the fall. Some projects for next year, which these are all been funded through ISIP. These are all capital projects that have been put in place. I'm going to have another at least 15 new shelters, bus shelters again next year. We have 4 brand new conventional buses, 40 footers. They're due to arrive in March, maybe even a little bit earlier. And I have funding for 2 more 40-foot buses, which of course everything takes a little longer now to go through manufacturing. But if I click send at the beginning of the year, we should have those by December of next year. So that's potentially 6 new buses and more to come. I've got 1 new mobility bus that's supposed to arrive in April, and I have funded 1 more mobility bus that, again, should probably receive later next year. Next slide, please. So some of the response or some of the questions or input from the 2019 meeting were we need more bus shelters, which I'm happy to say we are working away at that. We've probably done over, in the last 5-6 years, probably done close to 30 new shelters and accessible bus pads. And of course, the next topic, and that's come up for quite a long time, is when will there be a real-time arrival transit app, which, of course, I'm happy to say was implemented about 7 weeks ago, and it's going really well and really well received. Next slide, please. So as Tatiana mentioned at the beginning, in the opening, we will take some question and answers. And I'll just kind of go to the next slide, please. And I'll leave that up for the remainder. So usually with the in-person meetings, we usually would have comment forms, paper copies that people could fill out and just leave with us, with staff. Excuse me, this time around, of course, we can't do the paper copies, but if you find there's, after the presentation is done, or you don't get a chance to ask the question, or you think of something after the fact, I'm always available through email, or if you want to call me, my name's listed in the city directory. If you have some comment or a question after the fact about transit and accessibility, that's my email there that you can reach me. And I will keep files of those as I would keep the paper copies of the comment sheets. I'll create a folder for this process as well, because as you know, we do things a little differently now. So basically that's my presentation. There's some real exciting stuff with a lot of AODA component projects that were put in this year. There's again more shelters coming next year. My plan is to keep doing shelters and to keep searching for the funding to do the shelters over a period of time, and that probably wraps it up for me. So I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Mike, for your presentation. We did have 2 registered delegations. The first is Roger Court, so I'm going to proceed to add him into the meeting. Roger, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can. Please feel free to ask any questions or provide any comments that you may have.
Perfect. Good presentation, Mike. Lots of exciting stuff.
Thanks, Roger.
One question I had just about the existing the COVID protocol. I haven't taken the bus, but I know that you had wanted passengers to enter at the rear of the bus, but that's not an option for the ramp. So what has been the experience of passengers using the ramp during COVID? Okay,
I can easily answer that, Roger, not a problem. Basically, and this was done agency-wide as far as rear door boarding. So at the peak of the first wave, when we started in the spring, fares were bypassed. So we wanted everyone to exit and enter out the rear door until we got certain protocols like plexiglass in kind of a different design to protect staff and customers at the front of the bus. So we waived all fares and had everyone enter and exit off the rear door just to try to keep some safe distance. When we started going back to collecting fares, we went back to the front door. Now, during that time that we were doing rear door only, we were deploying the ramp for those that needed it. I know we had one customer that was in a scooter. So we did that so that we weren't leaving anybody, because of course the back door doesn't have a ramp, it doesn't kneel. It's very tough to do any of that. So basically the message all along was, if you have a mobility issue, and my staff knows, pretty much every rider by name. It's a small community, right? So we kind of knew who we needed to pick up and how to position the bus as far as still providing a service to those that had a mobility issue. Now we've stopped the rear door boarding But we've got signage up just to keep the congestion from the front, people trying to come in, people trying to leave, that we're asking those that can do so to exit out the rear door. But we've also still said, you know what, if you have a mobility issue, I was talking to a customer today about it, just to confirm, like, you know what, if you need the front door and the ramp or the bus knelt or the ramp deployed to leave the bus, you're more than welcome to do that, and we will make that work. So the rear door thing was for just for the until we went back to front door loading, but during all that we always kept loading those that needed the front, the bus knelt and the ramp. We continued to do that and will continue to do that.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's those are my questions for today.
Thanks, Roger.
Thank you so much, Roger. So we're now going to move to our second delegation, which was Bonnie Henderson. Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please feel free to ask your question or make any comments.
I just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today. I was curious, how many are actually on the call right now? Can you tell?
Through you. So we have approximately 7 attendees.
Okay.
And we are averaging between 5 and 10 on Facebook Live.
That's great. And I know people will watch it afterwards, which is really good. I think I just really want to emphasize that if you have any concerns dealing with accessibility, whether it's transit or accessibility, we're very lucky it starts with A, so we're the first one on the city website. But we actually have a complaint form you can fill out and send it in if you have any issues at all. And hopefully most things have already been addressed. We're working away in the city doing all kinds of things like that. And I just wanted to say that I'm glad to see that we finally got that up and working, and it looks great, fantastic. And I'm glad to hear it's working well, and that we're going to be getting some new buses next year. So, and you know, anytime you've got issues, you can get a hold of Mike. Mike gets right back to me, or Tatiana, or any of the staff, or you can email any of the counselors. And I guess that's basically all it is. Just if you have an issue, make sure you voice it so we know we can fix it. I mean, sometimes we can't fix it, or maybe it's going to take a bit longer, but can't fix something we know's broken, not working right.
That's right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Thank you so much, Councillor Henderson. So we're now going to move into reading the questions and comments that have been submitted through the Q&A. So I will be reading them into the meeting. As a reminder, if you would like to submit a question or a comment, you must do so through Zoom. So our first question is from Ken Wood, and it is, will bus shelters have solar panels to both power LED screens and plug in for rechargers for riders?
Hi, Ken. LED screens, well, not real high techy with that kind of stuff. I can certainly find out for you. I'm not sure if as small as those solar panels are, whether they would be enough to power anything else but the light, because I know the light is pretty high powered too. Although the LED screens, I'm sorry, the LED screens would be for bus arrival, maybe. Although I guess we got our cell phones, I guess that's the LED screen, but I'm not quite sure what the LED screen would be for. But I'm not sure if those solar panels, or if you could get bigger solar panels, would be enough to power anything more than the light that's in there. I'm not sure about that. But I could check.
Thank you. So our next comment is also from Ken Wood, and it reads, thanks so much for the on-bus screens that show times. It reduces anxiety of riders. Appreciated.
You're welcome.
Moving on to our third submission from Ken Wood. It reads, for your information, I notice many bus shelters have posted Sunday schedules. Should they not be removed and replaced with information about on-demand? Also, how long will on-demand be running?
Probably the Sunday schedules were probably in the newer shelters with the glass case. Okay. I know when I cleaned, when I disinfected the shelters back in the summer, I might not have gotten all of them. But the Sunday schedule, yeah, certainly can. I can look at that. I might have missed a couple. And on demand is working splendid on Sundays, and it's got two advantages. It's a huge cost savings for how we operate, and customers, I think, looking at my latest stats, get from point A to point B in 16 minutes on average, compared to the hour or more they used to on Sunday. And it's seamless to use. It's probably, I can't, I mean, we listed it as a pilot, but I'm really happy with it, and probably looking to use it at other times as well in the future. It's a great system, and it'll be with us for as long as it keeps working as well as it does.
Thanks, Mike. Our next comment is from Peter Zyme, and it reads, thanks, Mike. Can you send the link to the transit app? Follow up, what is the method of payment if you're an occasional rider who has difficulty with cash fare? And then there's a third question, how are the buses coordinated with the new intercity community bus transfers?
Okay, Peter, so we got 3 questions. So let's do the first one.
Can you send the link to the transit app?
Sure. Actually, it's you just want me to email it to you, Pete? I can do that. But it's pretty simple. It's onyourway.stratford.ca. So if you Google that, it'll bring you up to a secure website, and that's how you can track the bus. So it's onyourway.stratford.ca.
The second part was, what is the method of payment if you're an occasional rider who has difficulty with cash fare?
Would that be, I'm just thinking if that would be for either service, mobility, or conventional. I know that, well, it's funny enough you mentioned cash, because we don't do as much cash as we used to, but it's still around. Basically, I've seen a few of my drivers, and it's come up from time to time. If they're not, even with tickets, because you got to kind of reach up a little higher with tickets to get them close to the fare box, and it's right by where you would drop your change. But there's numerous times, and I've seen it myself, that the driver just holds out their hand and they'll dump it in for you. I've seen that many times.
And then there was another question. How are the buses coordinated with the new intercity community bus transfers?
Well, with the new intercity, so if you watched the news last night, we actually have 3 routes for Stratford, and then there's 2 routes out in the country. Through the county A and B routes, with the Stratford to KW and the Stratford to London, which we hope to be running in a week, they come into the terminal at the spot 8, and they actually have transfer times at the meat of the day between about 11 and 1 o'clock, that all 5 buses will transfer in there. And some of them are only like about 15, 20 minutes apart before you can get to a transfer. It's actually set up pretty well as far as transfer points between the county and between the Stratford routes. And it's the same going back. Towards the end of the day, the transfer points are actually set up really well. All the transfer points happen in Stratford, only because Stratford's kind of the terminal's kind of the central point between all the routes. As far as the interconnection between transit in the city, of course, with our services every half hour, so you'll bound to catch a bus within minutes after you get transferred off at the terminal. So it works well, even from what I can see so far in the first week. It works well with the transfer points when the buses come into the terminal.
Thanks, Peter. Our next comment and question is from Diane Sims. She says, great work. As well, she questions whether you will hire more mobility bus drivers.
As far as hiring more or bringing one or two back, once we get back up to full capacity, right now we're barely at 50% as far as the mobility side, and that's only because there's a lot of functions and a lot of programs that ELC or community living used to do, and they're not kind of back doing that yet. So we're pretty much, just to give you an idea, we would usually do over 400 calls a week. We're barely doing 200 calls a week now. So we're not quite, and you can say the same with transit too. We're about the 80%, 85% range as far as ridership goes. So we're not quite back to where we should be. And as far as the mobility bus goes, we're only about running still half because the demand isn't there. I'm hoping come the new year, things will kind of get back to normal, but right now ridership is still low on the mobility side. But once the need, we haven't turned anyone away. Once unless you were trying to get something the same day. But if someone wants a ride at 8 o'clock at night, we'll definitely. We haven't said no to anybody, and we'll start kind of ramping back up when the need arises. But we're always there. It's just no one's really using the mobility side yet. Like I said, it's only been about 50%.
Thanks, Diane. Our next question is from Ken Wood. How well are riders doing at wearing masks on the bus these days? Any issues?
Yeah, a big topic. I would say from what I've seen at the terminal and from what I've seen from riders, we're probably well into the 90% range. So I'm quite happy with that. And it seems to be the common theme anywhere you go, whether you go to Walmart or where you go to a variety store. I think the majority of people are wearing them. Of course, there's quite a few that can't wear them, and there's various reasons why they can't. So, but we've had no issues on the buses, for what I can tell from staff anyway. Staff wear masks still if they want. Probably half of mine do, even behind the plexiglass. So I would say yeah, people are being cooperative. They're being courteous. They're being respectful. They're being kind, which is kind of what the message has been all along. Just to kind of be friendly, and if you can wear one, please do. But if you're not, we won't ask you why you're not. But I would say generally it's been decent. Even the kids that we pick up at the schools, they're all wearing masks. So I mean a good chunk of them. So I've been quite happy with the response on transit.
Thanks, Ken. There is a follow-up comment from Ken. Kudos, Mike. Transit is getting better. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken.
We also have a question from Councillor Henderson. Just where is that website link on the transit page? And I believe that is for the app.
For the app? Yeah, if you Google onyourway.stratford.ca, if you just Google that, it'll bring you to a web page. So it's a web app. You can save it to your phone or to your desktop. Actually, the instructions are on the transit page on the city website. It'll show you how you can save it as a shortcut on your phone. It's not appy in a way. It's web-based. It's just used through data, so it's like a website kind of. But you can save it to your phone or to your PC. And the instructions are down near the bottom of the transit page. Shows you how to make that shortcut, so that all you have to do is just click on it on your phone. I put it on mine, and it comes up in like 2 seconds. So as soon as you type in that, you Google search it, it'll come up with HTTPS for secure, and then it'll be onyourway.stratford.ca. Then once you show it, I think it's going to the top right corner, drop down the dots depending on the phone, and you can save it to your home screen, and it's easy to do from there.
So there are no more questions or comments currently that have been submitted. Is there anyone else who would like to submit a question or comment? As a reminder, you must be logged into the meeting through Zoom in order to submit a question or a comment. Okay, there are, oh, and we have another question from Ken Wood. Where is the Transit Advisory Committee at?
Transit Advisory Committee. It's a good question. I know the committee that I'm on is the ad hoc one. So I'm not quite sure if that's what Ken is referring to, or the active transportation. Maybe Ken will type something else in there.
Citizens Committee, Bonnie might know. I believe that would be the Ad Hoc Transit Advisory Committee that would have been established.
Okay, yes, we meet, that ad hoc committee meets, which is the Citizens Committee, with myself and Councillor Beattie and Councillor Henderson. We meet approximately every 2 months. Our next meeting is actually in January of the new year. I think we're usually around mid-January as well. We'll be, of course, switching to electronic meetings as well. So we try to meet every couple months. Through the summer, I think we might have we skipped one because, of course, there were kind of other stuff that people had to do that were a little bit more important at the height of the pandemic, and there really wasn't too much new business. Although prior to the meeting before that, I had listed all the projects that were a go for this year. So, you know, like the buses, the on-demand, the new GPS system and call-out system. So it was basically an update from myself to the committee as far as what was on the books to do for 2020. But not everyone could make the meeting that we had set up a couple of weeks ago. Actually, the majority couldn't because of other previous engagements. So we didn't have a meeting last month, but there's one scheduled for the beginning of the year. So.
So we just have a comment from Ken Wood. Thanks all, and Merry Christmas and happy COVID-free New Year. Thank you so much, Ken.
Thanks, Ken. Same to you.
Are there any other questions that a member of the public would like to submit through the Q&A?
And if someone thinks of something after, there's my email address is right there. So feel free to get a hold of me if you've got other questions or you got a comment.
Okay, so there are still no additional questions or comments. Oh, we have from Diane. Thank you for the terrific service.
Thank you, Diane.
Okay, so if there are no other questions or comments, Mike, I'll turn it back over to you to wrap up this session.
Okay, thank you, Tatiana. Still lots of new things coming in the future, especially shelters. I can't have enough shelters. So that's the plan going forward, and updated equipment as well. The big thing for me was the real-time arrival. That was a pretty big project, and the on-demand too was something else that we've been working on for the last couple of years. So I'm quite happy with the progress this year, all during a pandemic. It was certainly an interesting time in transit, and probably will be for a while. And we had to create a playbook to where there was no playbook before. So, and not just for transit, but for globally. So, but I appreciate everyone's comments. I appreciate everyone, happy with the service and happy with the direction that we're going. And it's every year it's putting something else, going to task and getting things the way that we want it, and what the city wants, and what the public wants as well. So I appreciate everyone's input, and like I said again, you can reach me at my email address. You can also call me if you want. I'll be happy to answer your questions or take any feedback about the service going forward. So I thank you very much, and everyone have a great Christmas as well, and we'll do this all again next year.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.